Depending on how long you it's assumed that a majority might be at this meeting. There you go. Doesn't take much for that.
Call the meeting to order. Town board meeting, Monday, April 14th, 2025, 6 p.m. We're located at the Palmyra Eagles School District Community Center, 123 Burr Street, Palmyra, Wisconsin. Certification of compliance with open meetings law.
Yes, the agenda was posted and on the website.
Roll call.
Gajewski.
Here.
Martins.
Here.
Sauter.
Here. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Supervisor Martins on this next item. What way on this whole thing? Go ahead.
All right, everybody, as promised, the wake vote restriction ordinance is on the agenda tonight. What we're going to do is we're going to have that discussion first, cover that agenda item. That way, those who, in respect to your time, those of you who came for that, if you choose to leave prior to the rest of the meeting, you're able to get up and take off, and then we'll conduct the rest of our normal meeting after that. A couple of comments, or not round, but each side of the ordinance, the proponents and the opposition have 15 minutes to talk. That can be one person representing your side of the issue. It could be as many as possible within the 15 minutes. It's up to each side how they want to approach this. Please, if you are speaking, we would ask you to come up to the podium and speak from there, so everybody can, so you can address everybody and everybody can hear you clearly. Other than that, I think we're about as ready to go. So
yeah, I want to read this. Action on proposed ordinance 2025-1, ordinance restricting certain artificial wake enhancement.
So would somebody on the proponent or opposition side like to speak first? Okay.
Good evening. I'm Jim Hockman. I'm on the warm-up act with my friend Brian Tobias. I live W1194 South Shore Drive, lot 77A on Blue Spring Lake. President of the district's board for the past 15 years. I'm a property owner for almost 36 years. More important, I'm a kayaking enthusiast who sees the lake and its clarity, or more accurately, its degrading lack of clarity, from 1 or 2 or 3 feet at most off the surface, at least 2 and sometimes 3 times a week between May and October. And I kayak during our no-wake hours when the lake is at its quiet and clearest time. I come before your board, though, not with my board or presidential capacity, but more as a property owner who loves Blue Spring Lake and who asks you, the town board, to do the right thing. Much has been said about the supporters of this ordinance by those who oppose it. There have been personal attacks on my board. There have been claims of lack of transparency, the usual opposition strategies, but you, as experienced board members, know better than to give such non-factual, self-serving testimony much weight. I would ask you to consider the parallel between the roads whose safety and condition are entrusted to your town board with Blue Spring Lake as yet another type of thoroughfare. You would have no hesitation in enforcing the speed limit for safety purposes, or setting and enforcing a weight limit for the protection of the road itself. The township has both. This ordinance with respect to Blue Spring Lake is exactly the same thing and serves both purposes. When an overweight truck travels on a country road in violation of a posted weight limit, it accelerates the degradation of the road surface and perhaps even the base and surface of the road, just as ballast boating degrades the lake bottom, along with reducing water clarity, disturbing weeds that protect fish in the bottom of the lake itself, and which create waves, degrade our dam, degrade our seawalls, disturb others using the lake, be they skiers, fishermen, or paddlers. These same waves also drive aquatic weeds from the lake bed to the shores and require removal. When a vehicle travels on a town's roads in excess of posted speed limits, that vehicle creates a safety hazard for the speeding vehicle and for other vehicles, and of course for pedestrians. The operator of that vehicle who is speeding shows great disrespect for the rights of others. It is that very disrespect that is at issue in this ordinance. Is it right for one or two, and we count up to maybe 5 boats with ballast capacity, boats to cause damage to the lake and to create risk to others, so that these few people or these few families can pursue a type of sport which creates degradation to the lake bottom, the shoreline, and lake clarity? These boaters are free to boat elsewhere in larger, deeper lakes where the size and depth of these lakes can absorb the downward propeller thrust of their ballast boats without damage to the lake itself. Is it right for 1 or 2 or even 5 of 212 families in the district to impose their appetite for ballast boating and wakeboarding on all of the others and on the public when we know what damage this practice caused? Bear in mind what the sentiment, the clear, overwhelming majority of the residents is on this issue. I hope you're aware that in a special meeting of the entire district in December, which was called to allow all property owners to express their opinion, only one person spoke against the ordinance. Only 5 voters of the 79 who voted in opposition to the ordinance. At this meeting, we had many property owners return to the lake from their winter homes just to be there and to be heard, and to have their opinions heard. I'm sure you've noted from the recent batch of testimonials, and those negative testimonials, many weren't even from residents, many weren't property owners, perhaps some who had never been to or on the lake. But in the end, your views of this ordinance are the ones that matter. So I ask you to treat Blue Spring Lake with the respect, indeed, with the priority you ascribe to the town roads. Blue Spring Lake is a public thoroughfare. Is it right that the vast numbers who travel the lake should suffer its degradation so that a few families can ballast boat? You stop speeders, you prohibit overweight trucks from traveling country roads, all for the good of the township. This is the same thing, and for these reasons, I ask and we ask you to enact our ordinance. But for a more detailed and more substantive comment, our friend Ryan. Thank you.
Michelle, do you guys have an update if you're keeping time? How much time is on?
We are at 5 minutes, 29 seconds.
Remaining or?
No, that's how many votes.
Thanks, Jim. I'm Ryan Tobias, property owner of W1172 South Shore Drive, Lot 74A. My family has been on Blue Spring Lake since 1961. I'd like to thank the Palmyra Town Board for moving to advance and discuss the proposed ordinance that the Blue Spring Lake Management District Board passed in November and was supported by 94% of property owners at a special meeting in December. I'm here to represent the majority of Blue Spring Lake property owners who are in support of this ordinance. Boats operating in wake enhancement would utilize boat speed, ballast tanks, ballast bags, fins, or other devices or methods which cause a boat to operate in a bow-high manner to increase or enhance a boat's weight. Boats operating in wake enhancement mode can increase shoreline erosion, can increase scouring on the bottom of lakes, can decrease water clarity and plant abundance, and can increase the transfer of aquatic invasive species. As multiple studies link the high quality of lakes with higher property values, if wake enhanced boating continues on our lake, property values will begin to decrease. There are only 3 active wake boats on our lake, 3 property owners out of about a total of 210. Under the proposed ordinance, those boats could continue to be used for cruising, water skiing, and other activities, provided they are not operating in a bow-up manner, the ballast tanks and other wake enhanced features are not deployed, or the boat is not operated with continuous transition speed. Everyone apart from those 3 wake boat owners can continue to enjoy the recreational activities they have been enjoying behind their ski boats, pontoons, and personal watercrafts. Present ski club activity would not be impacted by the ordinance, as the 3 active wake boats are not being used by the ski club. In fact, the ordinance will increase the ability of all water skiers to enjoy calmer waters and slalom or trick ski without large waves generated from the 3 wake boats impacting them. A marked summary of the arguments made by those opposed to the ordinance is being distributed by my good friend Mary Beth over here, and it should be noted that just about 40% of the total number of opposition testimonials were from non-property owners. Half of those non-property owners appear to have never set forth on Blue Spring Lake, and 30% of property owners opposed were from only 2 families. Data demonstrates that 1, those opposed to the ordinance are in the minority, and 2, the rationales are not based in scientific facts. Most scientific and peer-reviewed studies conclude that wake boats should operate at least 500 feet from docks or shorelines and in no less than 20-foot water depth. Most recent studies from December 2024 and last month in March conclude that wake boats should not operate in less than 26 feet water depth. Blue Spring Lake is a total area of 151.4 acres with a total shoreline of 2.7 miles. Except for a few areas around a few springs where the depth reaches up to 27 feet, the remainder of the lake is entirely under 12 feet, averaging just under 7 feet. Blue Spring Lake is neither large enough nor deep enough for wake boats to operate in wake-enhanced modes. Compared to motorized non-wake boats, recreational wakes from wake boats transfer more energy to the shore and accelerate shoreline erosion. Residents from all around Blue Spring Lake have reported concern about the shoreline erosion. Putting this ordinance in place, which is within the town board's authority, will prevent future damage as well as property costs associated with future ecological degradation, whether those costs be repairing our individual shorelines or even more detrimental are dam. Property owner Chris Dupik shared that waves caused by a wake boat pushed their boat into their pier and caused a gash in their bow, resulting in over $1,000 worth of repair work and loss of several weeks of summer boating. When wake boats operate in a bow-up, stern-down manner, the propeller wash may scour the lake bottom depths of more than 20 feet, destroying aquatic vegetation and fish spawning beds, and turning the sediments into the water column, degrading the water clarity. Again, the average depth of Blue Spring Lake is just under 7 feet. When the most active wake boat on our lake drives up and down the middle of the lake, on average, the depth is 6 to 10 feet. When that boat approaches the eastern shoreline where my family lives, the average depth is 4 feet deep. If you talk to Trevor Dick, he will tell you as he rode around on the wheat harvester this summer, he could see healthy vegetation on the bottom of the lake, and then tracks from the active wake boat went up and down the middle of the lake. Areas that were barren where vegetation used to grow. A photo of that is within that handout that went around the room. Trapper also shared that after the most active wake boat was out on a Wednesday evening for several hours, Trapper spent the following Thursday morning collecting weeds in that area that were dislodged by the propeller wash. Earlier in the season, a large bog came to the surface, and in August, a board buried around the main spring came to the surface. Those opposed to this ordinance will say that it cannot be proven that these examples can be tied directly to the wake boats. Many claim, though, that it's not a coincidence that this has all happened this summer. A wake boat was actively used up and down the middle of the lake. This has been happening in other lakes across the state, and I can't highlight this enough. If our main spring is damaged by these wake boats, we will not have a lake. University of Minnesota's Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center in 2018 found that the ballast tanks of wake boats harbor zebra mussel larvae at a much higher rate than other types of boats. A 2016 study by researchers at the University of Wisconsin and Minnesota DNR and the Wisconsin Planning Commission on ballast tanks and wake boats found that the greater likelihood of transporting aquatic invasive species. Last summer, quagga mussels were discovered in Geneva Lake. Those opposed to the ordinance will say any boat has the capability to transport aquatic invasive species, and that is true. A wake boat owner on the lake stated that more fishing boats come in and out of the lake than wake boats with ballast, and that is also true. However, fishing boats have been in and out of the lake for decades, and we have not been impacted by aquatic invasive species. We are at a greater risk of acquiring aquatic invasive species by our current wake boat owners not properly draining or decontaminating their wake boats. Zebra or quagga mussels are entered into Blue Spring Lake, our ecosystem will be severely impacted and damaged. Blue Spring Lake has very few ordinances that have been acted over the years. As with our fast boating hours and counterclockwise boating direction ordinances, which have been self-enforced for decades, it is the hope that those on Blue Spring Lake self-regulate and abide by the proposed ordinance. Just as when we might see someone fast boating after 5 p.m. on any day other than Wednesday, residents wave those violators down and remind them of the fast boating hours. Hopefully, those who operate their boats in wake enhanced mode will abide by the ordinance. If not, we as neighbors can remind them as we do with violators of our other ordinances. If the behavior were to continue, the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office has indicated that they can enforce the ordinance. In cases where someone violates the ordinance, photos or videos will be sent to the sheriff, who will follow up with the violator, resulting in a potential citation. If the violator contests the citation, the individuals who submitted documentation to the sheriff will be required to follow up with Jefferson County or appear in court. This will discourage any frivolous reporting to law enforcement from occurring. However, we hope situations do not rise to this level, and those with boats who have the capability to operate in wake enhanced mode adhere to the ordinance as responsible and respectful neighbors. Clean lakes with healthy natural shorelines provide aesthetic value, recreational opportunities, higher property values, and a higher tax base. Research studies indicate home buyers of lakeshore properties prefer and will pay more for properties on lakes with better water quality. Therefore, sustaining or improving lake water quality will protect and improve lakeshore property values. On the other hand, if water quality is degraded, lower property values will result. Given that Blue Spring Lake property owners' property taxes contribute to 60 to 65% of the total base of the town of Palmyra, if this ordinance is not enacted to protect and preserve Blue Spring Lake, the economic loss to the town could be substantial. Those opposed to this ordinance will say that this ordinance is taking away their rights. To the contrary, everyone has the right to enjoy our lake, and that the rights of most lake users should not be infringed upon by the small minority of voters who create hazardous conditions on, under, and along the shorelines of our lake. Those using wake boats do not have the right to destroy our natural resource. They do not have the right to destroy our personal property. They do not have the right to cause irreversible damage to our lake, and they do not have the right to create a safety hazard to everyone else who uses the lake. Being a responsible lake homeowner is knowing and understanding the size and depth of the lake, and if and when someone purchases a boat to use the lake, as a responsible lake homeowner, the boat and its operation should be appropriate for the size and depth of the lake. It is clear, given the scientific studies and what we are experiencing firsthand on the lake, that wake boats using wake enhancing features are not appropriate for Blue Spring Lake. Are all of these risks that I've outlined worth the benefit for just a few voters, 3 current voters? It should be common sense to everyone in this room at this point. We ask that the Palmyra Town Board place the concerns of the majority of property owners in favor of the ordinance over the 3 wake boat families and the minority of families opposed, and then place property owners' concerns over non-property. Thank you.
Not sure how the opposition, if they have one speaker or multiple speakers, but I guess the first ones who'd like to speak, please. And while that person is coming up, I forgot to add earlier, I do have copies. I don't have a copy for everybody, but I do have copies of the amended ordinance that we'll be voting on tonight. So if you want a copy, it's here. Tomorrow, the entire booklet that we put together for this will be available probably in the afternoon at the latest Wednesday morning, if anybody wants it, you can, email it out. So those documents are ready, so.
So the copy that's here is different than the one?
This copy here is just the ordinance. This is all the backup.
Right, but the ordinance that she has a copy.
Yes, I did make a bunch of copies.
There's more over there,
Oh.
but I also made some. Please make sure we, full name and address.
My name is Troy Giles. I'm an attorney with Reinhardt, and I'm actually representing Mr. Tony Malinger, who's located at W1264 South Shore Drive. I understand Mr. Malinger. Firstly, to the individuals that spoke before me, I'm
Speak up, please. A little louder.
They didn't give us a microphone.
I'll try to go the best I can. Appreciate the comments that were made prior to me standing up and making comments here. Obviously, Mr. Malinger disagrees with the adoption of an ordinance. I work for a large law firm, and we handle a number of labor-related issues. These issues are popping up all over the state. Generally speaking, they're being done or initiated by people that have very little lake interest in the ordinance that are being proposed. We listened today and heard comments about people that may have offered commentary that don't even have an interest in the lake. Well, that same thing can be said about the advocates of the ordinance. One of the concerns that the group that I'm aware of is that the manner in which this ordinance began, the way the Lake District managed it and listened to and began its position against the ordinance or against the use of lake boats on the lake is pretty well documented in my letter that I think the board may have received, or the town received on February 18th of this year, and I'm hoping that that's a part of the record. There was secrecy involved amongst the Lake District members. There were committee formations that were made without an invitation to all the people on the lake. There was an unfair movement towards moving forward with this ordinance without involving everyone and hearing everyone's opinion. And I think from the very beginning, that set aside a very negative tone about this ordinance. The fact is that the record will show whether or not it was adequate and whether it followed the open meetings laws. From there, the matter became contested, and unfortunately, it seems like there's a lot of people in the room that are pitted against one another, or there are people with very strong positions. The ordinance, as it's presented, as we heard a number of times, is a handful of people, 3 people, 5 people who are using wake boats on this lake. And we're going to enact an ordinance. We're going to bring in the county to enforce that ordinance against 3 people, 4 people, 5 people. It sounds to me like it's a pretty good issue of targeting against a pretty small number of individuals. There are alternatives that could have been adopted. There could have been more meaningful conversations. The ordinance that is being presented here is identical to the ordinance that is being handed around the state of Wisconsin in various communities. This is not tailor-made for Palmyra or Blue Spring. It's everywhere. This ordinance was just heard on Saturday or Friday of last week. So to think that it's by someone or some group that has a particular interest in Blue Spring Lake, we disagree with that. Is there a concern? Yeah, I think there probably is. Could there have been a better way of reaching a consensus? Yes, I think so. But what you have right now is an ordinance with it repeats what's already in Chapter 30 of the Wisconsin statutes. You can already enforce it. It hasn't been enforced. The technology or the studies behind it, if I reach out to Mercury Marine right now, they will refute every single study that's ever been done regarding lake bottom, shoreland, erosion, danger, etc. They will. Find a group that advocates for quiet sports like kayaking and canoeing. They are absolutely going to tell you that they are the worst thing in the world for the lake. The truth is probably somewhere in between. I I think it's time to take a look at it and study it objectively and honestly without pointing at a tiny number of individuals. It's my understanding that not many boats come onto Blue Spring Lake, but where especially those who might be trying to use a ballast boat or wakeboard boat, those are residents of the lake. That's a concern because you're targeting your own neighbors, targeting your own individuals. If it's not coming from another lake, if they're not coming off of Geneva, if they're not coming off of Nagawicca or some and putting their boat in on Blue Spring, where's the invasive species come from? My guess is that there's a much bigger risk associated with boats used for fishing, dumping bait, emptying their own tanks into other bodies of water. And when it comes to enforcement, how much time and energy is the town going to put towards this to enforce it? Imagine the number of phone calls that the town is going to get. We haven't enforced, the town hasn't enforced, the county hasn't enforced Chapter 30 provisions yet. But now we're going to go out there and say, I saw someone riding for a distance, I don't really know how long, in a bow elevated position. So I think they were breaking the law, or their weight was excessive, or they were towing a surfer. I couldn't tell for certain, but I think they might have had ballast. But we don't really know, because you can pull that surfer as long as there's no ballast under this ordinance. How are you going to enforce this? It is going to take people videotaping, drone taping, photographing, reporting, the number of resources, the amount of resources that will be necessary to even try to get the county to the table to enforce something. And I'll tell you, I'd like to be the lawyer who represents that person who gets a citation. I'll do it. I'll take it. I mean, I'll take it all day long because we'll win. So look at the ordinance. Try to figure out, is this the best route? Do you have the means and methods to be able to do this? Is there another way that's available? Lake Nagawicca, the city of Delafield, just came up with a compromise. They said, let's try to figure this out before we enact an ordinance. And we have the city of Delafield police boats that are already on Nagawicca. Let's see if we can come up with an idea where maybe we do a little bit of self-policing, maybe we establish some guidelines. Distance offshore is a little bit easier to determine because of distance finders. Pewaukee Lake did the same thing. We're not going to end up citing or jumping into an ordinance for something that we haven't truly tested yet. There's clearly opposition to the use of wakeboards, obviously the audience, people on the lake. So before jumping into the ordinance, why not discuss it to figure out, as one of the people before me, the gentleman spoke about, policing. Being able to pick up the phone and call one of the individuals you think is violating and say, you're too close, right? I mean, try to tone it down. How about a responsible use of the wake boat? How about during limited times? How about on every other day? How about every other weekend? How about other means and methods to try to bring a compliance about, instead of jumping in and bringing the government in to enact an ordinance? The other thing I would say is, just looking at the ordinance itself, it isn't going to protect the water quality the way we obviously hope that it would, right? But it's not. You've got the fishing boats that may happen. You've got speed boats. You've got boats that can travel at a fast speed, pulling water skiers. That's okay. What happens when someone is first learning how to water ski or surf or do whatever would be permissible under this? You've got boats riding in an inclined position. Are they going to get cited because you were pulling a 35-pound 6-year-old learning how to ski for the first time? I mean, there are so many issues with the ordinance and its enforceability and applicability that it's going to lead, unfortunately, in my opinion, to conflict with the residents. And I would say, before embracing an ordinance, take the time, study the matter, look at it objectively, and see if it can be tailored down or narrowed down without it being expensive. So, you think it's time to shoot?
9 minutes and 5 seconds, I think we missed.
About 6 minutes left for anybody, or 6 minutes. Anybody else?
Well, we can only speak opposed to the ordinance in 6 minutes.
Could I have time to, it's only if we're opposed to the ordinance, right?
Yes, because the proponents used all 15. So, any opposition would like to talk? Got it, yeah?
I'm gonna mention a couple things. First of all, this was gone over by our attorney. Correct?
Yes.
Anything looks to be in order as far as the ordinance goes?
From my perspective, it passed its legal muster.
I will touch on something the attorney said. Growing up here all my life, this is a tough call no matter which way it goes, and I'll tell you why. I haven't seen people hit it against others, neighbors, etc., like this before. It's very hurtful, I'm sure, for all of the folks that live out of the lake, but it certainly is hurtful for me, being a resident that's grown up here all the way. So I just want to make that statement. Now, one thing that I did on this is about a month ago, approximately, a little less, I was actually down to Wilson Sport, and the mechanic down there mentioned they take boats on and off that lake, and he mentioned, you know what, we used to go out there and that lake was just as clear as could be, we can't even see the bottom. Well, that prompted me to get in my little Ford truck and drive over to the boathouse where they sell these boats over by Lauderdale. And I had a real nice conversation with one of the sales folks there that actually has skied with some of the folks on Spring Lake. I told him who I was, why I was there, etc., and this issue, and he'd heard about it. One of the first things that he told me is, if you're going to use a wake boat for what it's made for, hold ballast, and so on and so forth, and do the wakeboarding, surfing, etc., the lake better be at least 20 feet deep. Okay, so obviously that stuck in my head, because as somebody stated, the lake is only average, 6 to 8 feet deep. And he gave me a lot of information. I'm just trying to cut it down and minimize it here. He took me out, showed me a wake boat, showed me how they operate, and he told me that in that lake, most likely, if they load up and throttle up, what's it called, prop wash, probably cut the groove right down the bottom of the lake. In fact, he said even in a 20-foot lake, you should not use the same area all the time. So that's from a guy who says, I love selling these boats. He has $160,000 Bennington pontoon boat sitting there. I didn't realize he got that price. But it's from somebody that's skied with the folks here, loves to sell boats, and that's information that I can take. Anyone else have a comment?
I have a couple, excuse me, I have a couple. One is the county cannot enact laws. That's the state that's responsible for doing that. And the state hasn't taken this issue up. There have been attempts by various legislatures to bring the issue up at the state level. Hasn't really gone anywhere yet. There's a couple proposals at the state level right now. But the county did join, Jefferson County did join with the Wisconsin Counties Association and voted to join and agree with Jefferson County with the other counties in the state on 2D, 2BB urge the state legislature to engage in meaningful discussion to pass standards that protect our aquatic natural resources and balance the rights of everyone to recreate Wisconsin waters, recreate on Wisconsin waters, and